Welcome to your restorative practice. This is a gentle heart opening class. For this practice, you're going to need a blanket, 2 blocks, and a bolster. If you don't have a bolster at home, you can definitely use just like a big comfy pillow or something like that. Even a rolled up blanket will work. So go ahead and grab your props and let's get started on hands and knees. Just to prepare the body for rest and for our restorative practice, we're going to start with a couple cat and cows. And don't worry too much about your alignment or even matching your breath with the movement. It's more just to work out any tension that you're feeling along the entire spine and to address or identify where there might be some extra tension. So just take 2 or 3 more rounds each way. And then relax into a seat. So you set your hips off to the side and set up in a cross-legged seat for a little bit of breath before we get into our first pose. So bring your hands down for grounding or flip your palms up for receiving. Let your eyes close. And start to tune in with wherever your breath is at this current moment. Maybe it feels really high in the chest or the throat. Or maybe you already have that really grounded and earthy breath that's coming down to the belly. As you start to settle into your seat and you let your shoulders release from your ears, let your breath take up more space. Start to feel your body get almost a little bit of this internal stretch or an internal massage from the breath now as you pump it up a little bit bigger. Inhaling and exhaling through the nose. And starting to internally connect with your heart space. From the center of your chest and even all the way up to your throat. Noticing if that area is feeling particularly open or closed off. There may be a sensation there that would be hard to identify or maybe hard to put words to. But trust that that's okay. And you don't need to know exactly what you're feeling. All you need to know is that you're feeling it. And use breath to tell the heart and to tell the throat that it's okay to kind of gradually open. There's no rush. There's no end point. There's no goal even. You're just giving permission for that space to take up more space. Okay, blink your eyes open. And we'll set up for our first restorative pose. So for this one, you're going to need all your props. So we'll start with the bolster. Bring your bolster to the middle of your mat, horizontal. This is a restorative side opener. 1 block is going to come to the top on its lowest height. That's going to be your pillow. And then to make the pillow just a little bit more comfy, you can lay your blanket over the top of that. Your second block is going to come off the top of your mat on its highest height, and that one's going to take a little bit of adjusting once we get into the pose. So we'll start on our right side. Have a seat at the far end of your bolster with your hip up against the bolster. You're going to lay down over it with your right shoulder coming down to the mat so that the bolster is in between your shoulder and your hip, but both of those parts are making contact with the ground. Your head's going to rest on the block, and then your left arm's going to come over top. Wrap your left shoulder so that the armpit is closed down. You're not kind of pointing the elbow up or cactusing. You're wrapping. And then hand comes to rest on the block. You're going to want to move that block to a place where the arm can rest comfortably. And then stack your knees and hips. If you have another blanket and you want to put it between the knees for a little extra padding, you're welcome to do that. Once you found your position, make any little fidgets you need to be ultra comfortable. In restorative, you shouldn't need to hold anything up. You shouldn't be holding any position where you feel you have to tense somewhere in your body. So if you are feeling tension somewhere, or you're feeling like you have to hold yourself, discover what kind of adjustments you can make so that your body can come to even more rest. Let breath come back to that intentional place where it is internally massaging the body. Visualizing breath being this really nourishing liquid or this nourishing tonic that's traveling through the body, touching parts that are stuck, moving old fluids, old toxins around. Dusting out the cobwebs. Take a couple more deep breaths here, preparing to move. And start to bring your top arm down. Bring it behind your back so that the back of your hand is on your low back or on the bolster. And then let your shoulder and your elbow fall backwards. Creating a little bit of a chest opener as we transition. Then release your left arm back in front of you. Place your hand onto the bolster and use your hand on that bolster to help press yourself up to a seat. We'll turn the other way. Left hip next to the bolster and left shoulder will come down. Bring your head down onto the bolster. And then right arm overhead. Adjust that block however you need so the right hand can rest comfortably with a wrapped shoulder. And when you're in position, again, make the little fidgets or adjustments of props or clothing so that you can get super comfortable. Giving the weight of your body over to the props and over to your mat. And getting curious about just the breath. Seeing how can you release a little bit more. Still letting this process be gradual. As you get deeper into this practice, the body and the mind start to become really used to the idea of rest. Sometimes it can take a minute for us to switch from our day-to-day into this state. So if it's taking a little longer than usual today, just notice that, no judgment at all. And give yourself that extra breath and that extra time. Last couple breaths, preparing to move. Start to bring your right hand down and slip it behind your back so the back of your hand comes to your low back. An elbow and shoulder can fall behind you, creating a sense of openness in the chest. Couple breaths there. Then bring your right hand in front of you onto the bolster and use your hand to press yourself up as relaxed as possible to set up for our next pose, which is a restorative child's pose. So you'll come onto your shins, or onto your knees, and grab your bolster. The bolster is going to come between the thighs, and then depending on what feels most comfortable, you'll use 1 or 2 blocks or maybe no blocks. So I like to place a blanket underneath where I know my head is going to go. That's totally optional. And then you can decide if you like the bolster all the way flat on the ground, you can come down with one cheek down or the other. If you like a little extra lift, which I think I'll go for today, you can put 1 block. And if you even like this back end lifted or your far end up a little higher, you can add a second block either underneath the bolster closer to you or stacked on top of that first block. So again, bolster between the thighs, hips back on the heels, and then bring your cheek down, one side or the other, so you can rest in child's pose. Once you get into your child's pose, make sure to walk your hands forward so that your elbows are not beneath your shoulders and there's no tension in the shoulders, but your shoulders can completely relax away from your ears. In this pose, keep your hips heavy towards your heels and let your breath travel down into sacrum. As if you could balloon the sacrum or your low back up towards the sky with your inhale. As you continue to settle into this pose, allow the breath to travel from the low back and relay itself up into the space behind the heart. Feeling like the back of the ribs can lift towards the ceiling. Go ahead and switch your head so that the chin turns the other way, resting the opposite ear down just to even out the neck. Take your last couple breaths. Start to walk your hands back beneath the shoulders. Use your hands to press yourself up with a relaxed neck. And we'll switch to our next pose. So for the next pose, we're going to do 2 variations of bridge. So you can set both blocks to the end of your mat for later, towards the foot end. And then bolster can come off to the side within reach. So for your first restorative bridge, we're going to start in a more traditional bridge. Roll down onto your back, bend your knees, and then we'll place the bolster underneath the sacrum. So lift your hips up, slide the bolster in, and release your hips down so that you feel really, really grounded. You're not rocking or tipping forward or backwards. And you can either stay right here if this is really restful and comfortable, Or you can start to walk your legs long on the mat, either both at the same time or one at a time. Make sure your shoulders stay down onto the mat. And choose whatever variation for the legs is the most supportive and healing for the low back, whatever would feel the best. Let your arms come out to the side, either into a T shape or just a little bit away from the body. And breathe right into the space beneath the sternum, right into the heart space, making sure that throat stays open as well. Spend a few more big breaths here, letting the front body completely lift away from the back body. Then start to walk your feet in closer so they become underneath the knees if you had them out a little farther. Push into your feet just enough to lift off the bolster, and then slide the bolster out. Roll your spine down. Roll onto one side and press yourself up to a seat to switch to the second set of bridge. So for this set of bridge, it's a little bit deeper. If it's not feeling good in your body, switch back to the first version of bridge that we just did. So to set up for this next bridge, you're going to place your bolster long way on your mat, right in the middle. You're going to sit down towards the far end, the far third. Place your 2 blocks on their lowest height at the end of your mat. So when you sit down, your calves should be able to rest onto your blocks. These are just going to be an option for later, but this is the distance that you would want. Not too close to the knees and not too close to the ankles, but right under the meaty part of the calves. So when you're seated on your bolster, you'll want to lay down so that this end of the bolster hits right beneath or right behind the heart, and your shoulders can come down. So adjust enough so that your shoulders and your head are really grounded. Your upper back is lifted from the bolster, and then your hips are still down on the bolster. So you can stay with your knees bent, or you do have the option again to extend your legs onto the blocks. I encourage you to stay wherever is the most restful. And then come back to your slow breath. Take a couple more big full breaths. And then to gently exit this pose, we're going to tip ourselves off of one side. Rolling onto our side, push the bolster away from you, and then roll onto your back. For Shavasana, I like to place my bolster underneath my thighs, so you can slide it down there. Place it beneath the thighs or beneath the knees. Go ahead and just kick or move your blocks out of the way if they're still there. And then find your way into Shavasana with any prop setup that you prefer. Settle onto your back. And start to feel reconnected with your whole spine to the ground. Notice if energy is moving any differently in the front or the back of the body. Let yourself breathe into any changes that might have occurred. Give yourself time and space just to rest.
Start taking some deeper breaths, bringing awareness back to the body, adding little movements. And in your own way, make your way to a fetal position. And then up to a seat. Taking your time to get there, keeping eyes closed if possible. Once you found a seat, bring hands together at heart center. Gently bow the head down. May you remember that rest is just as important as getting things done, as being active, as being present. Rest is one of the best things you can do for your body, so take the time. Namaste.